Today we will be very precise, and we will need 11 malamekoims. So we're back to the fundamentals on our screen. And we have these three wonderful, amazing psuchim. And all the blessings in the world are included in these three wonderful brachos. So why don't we say them in Chutz La'aretz? So we will briefly visit 9 different sources, each and every one of them offering a different explanation. And when we're through with this study, we'll just sit back and wonder, why? Why? Do any of these sources really convince why? So let's start off with the Ramah. And that is the famous Ramah saying that Achenu Shebemedina Sayom don't have Birchas Kohanim, only Musaf and Yom Tov. So the Ramah, that is what we are most familiar.
Eliezer, 1 second. Eliezer, do you know the exact order of the Rambam that you put together here? So maybe you want to take it over because the Rav is going fast.
I think the package of Maramakoimis is too vast. It is huge. We can learn it a year.
Right, we could.
So let's have that. Here we are.
Okay, good.
Nahagu b'kol medinas elu she'ein noisin kapayim elu b'yam tov. Let's underline that. Mishum she'az shruim b'simchas yom tov v'toiv lev hu yevorach ma she'en ken b'sha yom afelo b'shabosas hashona shetrud b'erurim al mechietam v'al bitul melachtam v'afelo b'yam tov ein noisin kapayim elu b'tfilas musaf she'yotzem az b'beis knesses v'yismachu b'simchas yom tov. Divrei atzmo. Strange. So the Ramah says, Toiv leiv or toiv ayin hu yevorach. So in Chutz La'aretz, we're so busy with Parnasa we can't be happy. But Shabbos you're not working. But Shabbos you're worrying. All the week you're working your head off. And Shabbos you're worrying. You're thinking about your Parnasa. Yom Tov, you're somewhat happier. And this is really strange. The happiest moment in Yom Tov is, Musaf, you're going home and you're going to eat. Well, I have so many friends in Chutz La'aretz. I have so many friends in Eretz Yisrael. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't think you out there are happier than we are down here or up here. So we are aware. Maybe in days of yore things were different. But going back hundreds of years, I think Eden and Eretz Yisrael had a tougher time than Eden in Europe. Poverty was horrible in Eretz Yisrael. So, all I could say about the Ramah is interesting, convincing, not really. Let's go to the Weiss Yosef. And the Weiss Yosef quotes this early Minhag of Gedolei Ashkenaz, the Maharil and the Ogur. They're the very early sources. And this takes us back 700 years and even more. Kosovo Ogur. Could you make it a bit bigger for me to read on my screen? Oh, I actually could control my screen, not you. Kosovo Ogur Shenishal Mari Molin. And that is the Maril, the famous Maril. Lamo eina koyanim noisin kapeim b'kol yoim. Ma chashuv mitzvahs to say. V'heishiv. Mipnei sheminhag koyanim litboil koidem. K'mo shekosav agores mayim manes. U'b'kol yoim koshelem litbol b'chayrev. V'lachen olu aminhag davka b'yom tov. Strange. Because they have a minhag to go to the mikveh. And in winter it's very cold. So why don't you do in summer? And Chutz La'aretz is not only Northern Europe, where it's very cold. Chutz La'aretz includes the Middle East. So why don't we duchen in Chutz La'aretz? So it's because the mikveh. Okay, another reason. V'gam etam bittul malacha. Kishakoyin einin k'ani over. So it's not really a bittul mitzvah to say. If we don't call him, then he's not over. Ad kan hashoynai. Dochak atzme l'kayim aminik mekoyim ve'eino maspik. Ma shechosim apnei shekanam lo yigan litbo. Chimra dosa l'kula. Tolatanya b'delotanya. Tefillah l'nasiyas kapayim lo hiskala b'talmud. If you want to be a frumer and go to the mikveh, that is not a reason to be mevatel the mitzvah entirely. So the Beisos argues, doesn't make sense. ויעשה כוחם של בני ארץ ישראל וכל מלכות מצרים שנושאים כפיהם בכל יום ואינם טובים לנשיאת כפיים. So the Beisos brings the words of Gedolei Ashkenaz and he rejects their minhag. And he says, thank you for the Sephardim that duchen every day. So I think I mentioned last week I had the privilege, and I thank Reb Shlomo, my friend, every day for having the privilege to accompany Reb Alib Shteiman in his famous visits of Arbotzas Torah and Kiddush Shem Shemayim. And I accompanied Reb Alib on a few very significant visits: New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Toronto, and it was extremely inspiring and meaningful. And wherever Rabban Leib went, they always had a Sephardi kohen to come and do for him. And when I'm in Chutz La'aretz, usually in the Alps, Bein Hazmanim, if we have Sephardim, I am so happy, but I am very insistent that Ashkenazi should know, don't go up to Duch. So we had, to this very point, two reasons. One is parnosa, terdes parnosa, and a lack of simcha, the Rama, and the other is mikveh. Both are somewhat problematic. Ramami Pano, I don't know whether we have it in our package, but I definitely learned this. Chuvas Ramami Pano. Rabbi Menachem Azaria from the city Pano in Italy, was Gedolei Italy, and Simin Sadik Hay, he comes out against this minhag. Here we are. Masha b'Rav Olam ein koyanim olam leduchen kol yom Moisei Shona minhag garua hu mishum bittul malacha la'am. Bittul malacha. That's something we didn't have. Not tirda and lack of simcha, bittul malacha. How long does it take to duchen? 1 minute? 2 minutes? 3 minutes? Strange. What bittul malacha is there if you duchen every day in the morning? Poetic. So on Parsha Shmini, V'yisu Aaron es yoda v'yered mi'asoy sechatos. He skipped a component in this pasuk. V'yisu Aaron es yoda v'yavorech esuam. V'yered mi'asoy sechatos. Lafichach nagu shaloi leses kapayim ela b'yom toiv no bo musavdavka sheyesh bo chatos. So the Mami Pano writes, it's a new drash. Who are we to make new drushes? If it's not in the Gemara, it's not in the Mishnah, it's not in the Bryce, how could you make a new drosha? And why don't they do Chan Rosh Chodesh? That is a question he doesn't even ask. In Rosh Chodesh we have a Chatos. Shabbos we have a Chatos. So why only Yom Tov? So Raman Pano writes, it's a minhag garua. And just like the Beisos, he comes out against this minhag. Kolbo. Kuf Chav Hey. Kolbo was one of the Rishayim. And once again, an Ashkenazi Rishon, not a Sephardi. Might we have the Kolbo in our package? It is Simen Kuf Chav Hey in Kolbo. And it is similar to the Ramami Pano, Torah Chatzibur. So we have many sugyas in Shas, Terche de Tzibura. So there's halacha, you're not going to Sefer Torah from one place to the other in public because that's why we prepare two different Sefer Torah. We shouldn't need to be goylel. So if we don't have the kolbay in our package, okay, here we are. So the kolbay was one of the early Ashkenazi gedolim. If we could have Siman Kuf Chofai, it's just one line, just a few words. Torah Chatzibur. And I asked the same question we just asked under the Mami panel, Bitul Malacha. Torah Chatzibur. First of all, let's stop for a moment. So in his day and in his vicinity, they also duchen on Shabbos, not in the middle of the week. Strange. Once again, I ask, how long does it take? 1 minute, 2 minutes? You're in shul anyway. So how much does it take? Strange. Zera Emes. Zera Emes is an amazing sefer, one of the greatest Sephardi Gedolim going back 200 years. And I apologize for getting up a moment because I just want to bring my sefer to the table. Chele Gimel Siman Yud Beis. You have, wow, a very old print. There's a beautiful new one. So the Zera Emes was known as Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. His name was Rabbi Shmuel Kohen, and he was one of the greatest Gedolim of his era. So he was fondly known as Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. And he
is not the one that the Rav taught us about the vaccines? Is that not the same person?
It is. Wow, you have an amazing memory, Shlomo. That goes back many years to the COVID period. Yes, I'm very fond of this sefer. And he quotes a Zohar. And the Zohar says, if there's a non-Jew present, then the brachas will not come down from the heavens. And because non-Jews come in and out of our shuls and chutzlaretz, and we don't want to offend them and say, leave the shul because we're going to bless the tzibur, then maybe that would be the reason why we don't duchen in chutzlaretz. And what is appealing about this interpretation is it is a clear interpretation to differentiate between chutzlaretz and Eretz Yisrael. Because all the other reasons, if it's Torah Chatzibur or Bitul Malacha or Simcha or Mikveh, why would there be a difference between Chutzlaretz and Eretz Yisrael? However, according to the Zera Emes, this is the first explanation that at least explains why would there be a difference between Chutzlaretz and Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so we have it in the second column. Second paragraph, he brings the Zohar in Parshas Nosoi, the Sganas Tima Atike Kedishin, and the Zohar Mishpotim Yeroko Zechuchon, Besemchosei Lo Yitarev Zar Bar Mendain Dumya, the Ein Maran Sefer Torah Legoy, the Ikenama Chilul Hashem Di Yishtiku. This is a very bad print. That's why I wanted to get up and have my sefer. Wait a moment, I'll bring my Zera Emes.
Okay, to make it bigger, whoever's in charge, will make it bigger at least. Not terrible print. We read worse.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find a better print.
You're fired.
I'm happy to be fired.
We're going to dock you your pay for this week, okay? Or better yet, we'll double it. What do you say to that? Huh? No.
So the kotera, the heading of this tshuva is in the new print. Im oimrim Birchas Kohanim k'sheyesh goyim bebeis hakneses. And the question was, goyim come to visit our shul. And they just come to look around and see the Jewish house of worship. Could we have Birchas Kohanim when they are present? And he brings the Zohar. והיא שתה דכהנא פרסה ידהו לבורכו יש עמו שכינתה שריו, ומסגלם אז אורס עליונם, מחשיני שביושם איש זר שלא מזל יסול, יעקב השפורס הברוכס. And he brings the Zohar. Yes. So the Zohar says, Ala posek yeruach zechucho, b'simchos lo yisad v'sar, bar min dein avadumi d'mashom lo dein mashav d'goy. So the Zera Emes brings the Zohar that if Gentiles are present, then the bracha doesn't come out down from the heavens. And that is the reason we don't do chen and chosas. And so, as I explained, it is the first reason that gives a clear differentiation. Why would Chutz La'aretz be different than Eretz Yisrael? Beis Ephraim Simen Vav.
Does that mean that the Kaisel, before Birchas Kohanim, we have to look around and ask all the Goyim to leave? I mean, we're going to go that far? Up this way?
It is Kabbalah. And if the Yosef doesn't bring this din, we are very choishish to Eva. Justly so. Chazal were so careful about not offending people of other faiths. But I don't think it's very common that B'shas Tefillah there are non-Jews in the Bismedish where we daven. If it happens, I do not think we need to tell the Kohanim to wait and tell the Goyim to leave. But anyway, it is a Zohar, and the Zera Emes suggests maybe that is the reason that we don't do chen in Chutz La'aretz. Similar argument we find in Beis Ephraim. So the Beis Ephraim is a lengthy tshuva, but he quotes the Ravid in Sefer HaMiktzayos. We actually had the Ravid on our screen last week, and it's right here. It's right here. The Ravid in Sefer HaMiktzayos. Heiche de'ike nido bebeisa, ose leile meisek leduchen, kol emes de'itze benidoso. And that is also a gewaltige Chiddush al pi Kabbalah. It has no resonance al pi halacha. But the Beis Ephraim says, maybe that is the reason we don't do chen. But once again, why would there be a difference between Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael? So the Beis Ephraim just tries to come up with a suggestion. Why not? Maybe because there might be a nida. Where? In shul? In the Ezes Noshim. And that is why we can't do Duchen Lamato. There's some Sofer quotes the Beis Ephraim. Let us scroll down and see there's some Sofer. He brings the Beis Ephraim. שואל נשאלתי ממלס קודם, לא חשוב מה שכוסף בחודש שמוצא בשם ספר מקצועיס, שחיבר רבינו חנן, וכהן הנכנס בבית שאיש שמיד שם, לא יבורך הססוד, ובחוסר כלול את החושב לו ולזרוי. בפי חודש מסיים שאין לפעסם הדבר. במחילס כבוידוי, עובר על דברי עצמוי והפה פסמוי. So there's some Sefer is somewhat cynical. Some Sefer says, if you think ain't a farsim, why are you a farsim? Well, probably the Pri Chodesh assumed that not every Amma Oretz is going to learn the Pri Chodesh. So yes, Talmid Chachamim are allowed to be aware. After all, it's the Ravid and Rabbeinu Chananel, but ain't a farsim adovel hamoin. הדבורים האלה הביאים הרבי בפירושו למסכת תומד ונדחק מאוד למצוא טעם לדבר. And the Beis Ephraim says, maybe that is the reason that we don't do chen today. Okay. Maybe. There's some Sofer himself in this very tshuva offers a different explanation. So there's some Sofer writes, we say Birchas Kohanim and Birchas Avoida, in Tfilis Avoida, in Shmoyne Esrei. And that is because Vayiso Aaron es Yodav Eloam v'yevorcheim, and Beis Hamikdash Birchas Kohanim was part of the Avoida. And that is why we say Birchas Kohanim in Shmoyne Esrei. And machshava pasel zavoida. And we don't have proper kavanah. So the Ramah already writes in Hilchos Tefillah, we don't have proper kavanah. And that is why even if we didn't have kavanah by Birchas Avos, we don't say the Shmoneh Esrei again. And because Birchas Kohanim is part of the Avodah, and Machshava Poseles Avodah, that's a some service approach. So my dear friends, we're not through yet, but you probably realize how problematic all these explanations are, and none of them really makes sense to explain two fundamental questions. One is bitul mitzvahs asay. It's a mitzvah dioraisa. 3 mitzvahs, as the Gemara says in Soita Daf Lamed Ches. Does any of these explanations make sense to explain two fundamental questions? One is the mitzvah, and the other is the bracha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bench us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Koisavachu. Va'ani avarcheim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bench us. You know, I think it was the Stipler. I'm not sure, but one of the great Gedolim, a person came to ask for a bracha. He has different problems, parnasa, gesund, came to ask for a bracha. And the Stipler told him, go to Birchas Kohanim. And he wondered, is Birchas Kohanim such a powerful scholar? It's the most powerful scholar ever. HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises, V'samo eshemi al b'nei Yisrael, va'ani avorcheim. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu talking to us in the Torah HaKadosh. You do yours. V'samo eshemi al b'nei Yisrael, va'ani avorcheim. So does any of these reasons make sense to explain why don't we take advantage of Birchas Kohanim? Beis Ephraim Simavav. Okay, we have the Sam Sefer. Let's have a look at the Sam Sefer. We have it on our screen. So after the Sam Sefer goes the Beis Ephraim and the Rav and the Sefer Yisois and the story about the Nida, then the Sam Sefer gives his own interpretation. Let's scroll down. And the Sam Sefer says, because Birchas Kohanim is avoida, I think we should go down still. But Anias Dati, okay. And he brings the Beis Ephraim as you see, and explaining that is the reason we don't do. Benelli Tam Poshut. And this is the Sam Sefer's own approach. Benelli Tam Poshut, and Asiyas Kapayim Ksiv Bekro Achar Avoida, Kedi Alfina Penny Beis the Megillah, Veyered Masois Echatas V'yavorech Esruam, Betfila B'mokam Avoida. ואין ספק כשאין אבוידה רצויה והפיגור חס ושלום, גם Birchas Kohanim לא תחול על המזבח המס. והיועץ ואבוניסנו רבם כל ימי שיחות תבודם על המחר ועל כקולו, ורוב התפילס בלי כוונה, ותרדם הרבה, ותפילה בלוי כמונה כקורבן שאינו רצוי, על כן מבורכים ביום טוב. You know why this doesn't make sense? But we do daven, and we don't say it's not rצוי. Tefillah is the Rabbanon, Birchas Kohanim Dioraisa. So Mervata, we don't do the Dioraisa because maybe the Tefillah is not Ratzui, but you daven, and Tefillah is only the Rabbanon according to the Ramban. So you Mervata mitzvah Dioraisa because maybe the Tefillah isn't proper. So if the Tefillah isn't proper, why are you davening? So all of these explanations are so far-fetched. The Beis Ephraim uses stunning language. And the Beis Ephraim says, Ad she'atu shoyel, why we don't do Chana Chutz La'aretz. The real question is, why do we do Nesiyas Kapayim and Eretz Yisrael? That's the question. How did he get there? So the Beis Ephraim following in the footsteps of the Marashdam 200 years earlier. The Beis Ephraim argues that we don't have real Kohanim, this man is saying. And all the Kohanim are Suffolk Kohanim. And it's just Kohanim Chazaka. But who knows whether we have proper Kohanim? And because Zar Ha'oile Leduchen, and that's the sugya we discussed last week, Zar Ha'oile Leduchen is mevatel mitzvahs asay, so it is better not to do Birchas Kohanim and be mevatel a Suffolk mitzvah b'sheval taisa than doing Birchas Kohanim and maybe you're over on a mitzvah say b'kum v'asay. So the Beis Ephraim says, I think we should wonder why do we do Birchas Kohanim in Eretz Yisrael, not why we don't do in Chutz La'aretz. And this seems to be a huge exaggeration. Halacha l'maisa, the Mishnah Brura, like all the other great poskim say, Chas v'sholom to be mefakbek ad kahuna b'zman hazeh. We say a brocha in Birchas Kohanim, Suffolk Birchas Local. We say a brocha in every pidyon aben, Suffolk Birchas Local. Chazaka is one of the most powerful halachic elements. And Cheskes Kahuna is intact. And our Kohanim are not Suffolk. I am hostile to the idea. Some people by pidyon aben look for a rapport. I hope I'm not offending anyone with what I'm going to say now. So you look for a rapport, there are special Kohanim. There are no special Kohanim in our days. All the Kohanim are the same. Anybody that has a Cheskes Kahuna and is Oile Leduchen, Kohen. So the Beis Ephraim is one of the few Gedolim that argue our Kohanim are really Suffolk Kohanim. And Kahuna today is very questionable. And therefore, L'chayda would be better not to duchen, because if you're not a Kohen and you're Oile Leduchen, it's a brocha levatala and a avera asay, like we see in Ksubas Chov Daladom and Beis, Sheval Tas Odif. So the problem with this approach is, as I said, and I dealt with this in many, many tshuvas. Gedola chazaka. If there would be any question about Kahuna, we would not say a brocha, neither by duchenim nor by pidyon aben, because Suffolk brocha is lahokal. So we assume Kahuna is 100%. So before the punchline, let me share a word from my father, from my late father. And whenever I could say it about in my father's name, big schus to me. My father was a huge Talmid Chacham. We were neighbors with the Moshe Feinstein when I was a little boy in the East Side. I don't remember the Moshe from the East Side because I was 6 years old, and I'm embarrassed to say, as a 6-year-old child, I didn't really have the potential to appreciate the learning and the teaching of the Igros Moshe. When you read the stories of Gedolim, every Gedol by 6 years old knew Mishnayos about Peh, and and learned Yom HaValayla, and so I'm not a Gedol. As a 6-year-old kid, I wasn't into the Igros Moshe. I don't remember, but I did visit the Moshe quite a few times in the later years when I came to America. So my father was very friendly, and the Moshe tried to convince my father to take a rabbinical post. And he said there's a town in upstate New York, I think it's called, I don't even remember, Liberty, somewhere in the mountains.
Tannersville? What is it called? Tannersville? Oh, Willoughby. Oh, Liberty?
Liberty?
Liberty.
Or something like that. The name just escaped me this moment. And the Moshe said, Winter fällt der größte Schnee, man kann nicht rausgehen von Shlit. My father's name was also Reb Moshe. Reb Moshe, one winter you're going to be a Godel B'Yisrael. Ein winter it's not a Godel B'Yisrael. Didn't occur to the Igris Moshe. If you can't leave your house, what are you going to do all day and all night besides learn Gemara? So he tried to convince my father to take Abrabonis. For some reason, my father didn't go for it. He was a businessman. He was in construction. It meant a lot to him to build houses in Yerushalayim, Kodesh. But he was a huge Talmid Chacham. So my father had a vote. Why do we do Chana Chutzars? Only Yom Tov. So the Eimig Brocha, Rav Aryeh Pomeranchik, was a Talmud of the Briskerov. And I like to share some biographical details in my shiurim. Many titles of the Briskerov we know only from the Sefer Eimig Brocha, Rav Aryeh Pomeranchik. What people aren't aware of, Rav Aryeh Pomeranchik died when he was 30 years old. A younger man. And he wrote 4 amazing Sforim. And he was a Talmid Muvak of the Brisker Rav. And what he achieved in 30 years is unbelievable. Shana Rav Bun, B'chof Ches Shenoisav, the Yerushalmi says in Birchas, what a Talmid Vosek learns in 100 years. So Rabbi Pomeranchik died when he was 30 years old. And he learned so much Torah. And he's one of the greatest Matike Shmo of the Biskarov. So Rabbi Pomeranchik has a gewaltige kasha. Iker din nesines kapayim en eila b'shas avoda. Second paragraph. Heine Birchas Ritzei.
Scroll down a bit.
And that is why we say Birchas Kavim and Birchas Ritzei. But according to the Ramban, Tfela de Rabbanon. So how could Nasias Kapayim and Birchas Kavim be Menatoira? V'shomati mekvoid moiri v'rabi. The last line that we have on our screen, column number 1, the right-hand column. Shomati mekvoid moiri v'rabi David Bris Shlit v'shem Ovev Moran Aglach Alevi. She'echodik shaloi. La'sovrim the tefila einena midrabanan aichit tochen Nasias Kapayim megvura mediuraisu lekavoida. V'teretz loi. After sovereign tefila d'rabanan I dafka choyves tefila. So let me explain Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim said, according to the Ramban, the chiyuv to daven is midrabanan, but the essence of tefillah, in the sprach of brisk, the chefza of tefillah is minatayra. And I made this point many times. According to the Ramban, of course, tefillah is a concept which is minatayra. Avrom tikkun shachas, Yitzchok mincha, Yankav Arvis. So the Briskerov says, according to the Ramban, the chiyuv to daven is midrabanan, but the essence of tefillah is minatayra. So whenever you daven, you have a chiyuv of Birchas Kohanim. Avi Moiri Shlita made an interesting comment. The Ramban in Parshas Emoyom, Perek Chav Gimel. Maybe we could have it on our screen. So in Parshas Emoyom, Perek Chav Gimel Chumash Vayikra, the Torah says, Mikroi Kodesh. Ele Mikroi Kodesh. Asher Tikro Oisam B'Moy Adam. So the Ramban explains, the beginning of Perek Chav Gimel, V'yamartu Lahem, Moy Adei Shem Asher Tikro Oisam Mikroi Kodesh. Elehem Moadai.
We have it on the screen for you.
Okay. V'tam Mikroi Kodesh, Shio B'yom Zeh, Kulam, Kruim, V'nasofim L'Kadesh Oisam. Mitzvah and Yisrael, Kobetz v'beisu elekim b'yom moed v'kadosh Shem v'padesu b'tefillah b'halal. So that this is the Ramban, my dear friends. This is the Ramban that says tefillah is midrabanan, but Yom Tov tefillah is minatayra. That is mikroi kodesh. Mitzvah hi al Yisrael, Kobetz v'beisu elekim ביום מועד לקדש יום בפרהסיה בתפילה והלל. So my father said, that is why we do chutz la'aretz Yom Tov, because Yom Tov is the only day in which tefillah is d'oraisa. If tefillah d'oraisa, then Birchas Kohanim d'oraisa. And that is the source of the Minhag to duchen on Yom Tov. So once again, this approach doesn't explain ma bein eretz Yisrael chutz la'aretz, but it's a beautiful pshat. What is the difference between Yom Tov and weekdays, Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos? What is unique about Yom Tov? Mikroi Kodesh. The Ramban that maintains that tefillah is the Rabbanon. But Yom Tov, it will be a D'oraisa because that's Mikroi Kodesh. Lekobetz bebeis harakim b'yom ha'id, lekadash yoy b'faresa b'tefillah v'hala. So, of all the other reasons, I think this one is quite appealing. So he gave 9 pshotim. And after 9 terutzim, akusha b'mkoima oimedes. So let's have a look at the היו"השחור. היו"השחור. Kuf Chof Ches Samech Daled. An amazing lashon. I am losing battery, so we need to wrap things up, and it's 8 o'clock. היו"השחור. Sif Samech Daled. Vade ein shum tam nochen lemenagenu levat lemitzvah lebers kan kol shol kulo. Ein shum tam nochen. You need a bit of courage to write this line. Because of the Minhag Geruah, it means that Amami Pano. Manasa, Kielu Bas Kol Yoso, Shalona, Niachlono, Lissikapayim, Bakola Shuna Kolo. I use this expression many times. Kielu Bas Kol Yoso, Mekublari, Shishne Gedoyle Ador, Bedori Shalafane, Poleko, Bemkome, Rotzalayim, Sis Kapayim, Kolyom, Ukishigbilu Yom Amugbanase, Nisbal Balwinian, Valoyola Biodam, Vaamro, Shaloyim, Kimena Shamayim, Nigzerokain. Wow.
Can the Rav tell us who these 2 Gedolei Adar are?
Meishav Dova, then it's it. And that's our next source. The היו"השחור keeps the secret to himself. Do you know the היו"השחור wants a brother-in-law? Then it's it. They were brothers-in-law. So the היו"השחור doesn't want to talk about it, but the Netziv does. Chelik Beis Kuv Dalet. זכורני ששומעתי כמדוע מחויסני מאריץ רביצה למברוש. It's interesting that he doesn't remember with clarity. שפעם אחד הסכים רבינו הגרו, להנהיג נשיאת כפיים בכל יום בבית מדרשו, ויקבעו מן השמיים, ונלקח לבית האסורים, בעץ המחלוקת הנורא בבילנה לא עלינו. So that was the machlokes with Hasidim, and somebody foul-mouthed the Gro for the authorities. He was taken into custody, and that was the night before he planned to be Machadash Nesias Kapayim. V'yachar kach, Chami Zekeni, Abir HaRoya Ma'arach, Rab Chaim Avolozhin, Hiskem b'yom echad sheb'yom ha'mochos yitzav Alisa Kapayim, u'ba'ois elaylo, Nisaf Chatzi Ha'ir lebeis HaKnesset shebe'ir, v'rov v'zboinenu, sheyesh v'zeh is a davar, Soid b'sisrei hashpoas abrocha hayored alidei birchas kana b'chutz la'aretz. So, Rab Chaim Avolozhin planned tomorrow morning to start the Nesias Kapayim. Terrible fire broke out. Half the city burned down, including the shul. So what do you need more than that? And I say, because we don't really have any compelling reasoning, that's why we need to be machmir b'yoisa. After we see this Netziv, who are there? Who are there? What I wonder is, how did Rab Chaim Avolozhin there after what happened with the girl? So I have 2 explanations. One would be Treizim Nahava Chazaka, Tlatzim Nahava Chazaka. One time might be coincidence. But if it happened 2 times, and by din and the first is where Machmet Treizim Nahava Chazaka, 2 times is enough. So the 2 Gedolim, the היו"השחור talks about are the Gro and the Stam Rab Chaim. The other teretz would be maybe Rab Chaim wasn't aware of what happened in Vilna. You know, in our day and age, we have instantaneous information from split second. In those days, Vilna is not very close to Ladashin. And maybe Reb Chaim wasn't aware of what happened in Vilna. It's strange. It's strange, but maybe, who knows? But anyway, our conclusion is, Dafka, because we have no real compelling, convincing reason, that is why we need to be even more machmir, especially after we learn the Netziv and the היוםהשחור. And that is why in Chutz La'aretz, ein chochma ve'ein tfuna ve'ein eitzer, you don't duchen. And I'm makbid, even in Israeli minyan of Chutz La'aretz, Ashkenazim should not duchen. Sfardim, tovei broch al roisha. That is their Messiah, and they follow the footsteps of the Beis Yosef. So in Chutz La'aretz, Sfardim duchen, Ashkenazim don't, and that's the right thing to do.